The US President Donald Trump has said that Russia and Ukraine would immediately start peace talks after he spoke with Vladimir Putin.
This despite the Russian leader rebuffing his call for an unconditional truce. Trump framed the 2-hour conversation as a breakthrough. On his Truth social network after Monday's call, he said, and I'm quoting here, "I believe it went very well. Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations towards a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war."
Later, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office that he thinks Putin is ready for a ceasefire. Listen to this.
You previously on Truth Social implored President Putin to stop. You wrote Vladimir stop, and he didn't stop, quite the contrary. I'm curious, did you bring that up on your call with him today?
No, I didn't bring that up, but I did say it's time, you got to stop this thing. And I believe he wants to stop. Look, I would be, I think, very able to tell whether or not he wanted to or what. I thought there was a very good chance, like a 50-50 chance, that he would say, I want to take the whole thing. I didn't know what he was going to say. And then they have a different kind of a problem. But I believe he wants to stop. Pretty sure.
Speaking to Russian media, Putin called the call with Trump very informative, very open, overall very useful. He said he was ready to work with Kyiv on a memorandum towards ending the war.
We agreed with the U.S. President that Russia will suggest and is ready to work with the Ukrainian side on a memorandum on a possible future peace treaty, which defines a number of issues, such as the principles of settlement, the terms of a possible peace agreement, and so on, including a possible ceasefire for a certain period of time, if the appropriate agreements are reached.
The Russian president added that both Moscow and Kiev should show maximum effort to find compromises that would suit all sides. And the Kremlin said that Putin and Trump did not discuss a timeline for a ceasefire in Ukraine. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov said that Trump and Putin are both in favor of meeting in person and will assign their teams to work on preparing a meeting. But no venue has been agreed.
Now, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky spoke to Trump both before and after the Putin call, urging the U.S. president to toughen sanctions against Russia if it refused a ceasefire.
I asked him before his conversation with Putin not to make decisions about Ukraine without us. And for us, these are matters of principle and very important. We agreed that we would get in touch after his conversation with Putin.
Zelensky also ruled out withdrawing troops from parts of eastern and southern Ukraine under Kiev's control, rejecting demands put forward by Russia for ending its invasion.
For more on this, a correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
President Trump and Vladimir Putin of Russia held a 2-hour telephone call on ending the war in Ukraine. President Trump called it a success, saying that ceasefire talks could begin immediately. Vladimir Putin repeated demands for major concessions before halting the fighting, insisting that peace must address the root causes, meaning Russia's influence over Ukraine. He offered no breakthroughs. Vice President J.D. Vance cast doubt on Vladimir Putin's intentions, saying, quote unquote, "I'm not sure Putin has a strategy to unwind the war. He's re-engineering his economy for conflict." So does this call highlight how far apart the two sides really remain, or is it a fresh diplomatic push for peace? Well, at the Rose Garden later in the day, President Donald Trump responded to shouted questions on whether or not if he thought Putin wanted peace and whether he thought Pope Leo could help broker it. In both instances, he responded in affirmative, quote, "I do." Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
For more on this, we're now being joined live by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis. He's a military expert and the host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
All right, let's just get right into it. Of course, this was a 2-hour-long call. We've seen the statements that have come out from both sides as well. Trump as always seems to be more optimistic than Putin. Would you say that's the case? And what's your assessment of the overall conversation?
Yeah, without question, Trump was a lot more optimistic than Putin was. But we also have to understand that the Russian side has not changed at all since before Trump came into office, really going back to June of last summer when Putin made a very direct and overt statement of here's what will end the war. Not a ceasefire, but an end to the war, a complete and total cessation. And those conditions have not changed since. They didn't change before this call. They didn't change after this call. You look at what Putin said very clearly. He said, yeah, we'll talk about the end of the war and maybe even a ceasefire if conditions are met. And his conditions are the ones that they have been before, which subsequently Volodymyr Zelensky said they would not meet, which is the withdrawal of all their forces from the 4 administrative borders of the annexed territories that they've been fighting over, no NATO, and demilitarization, denazification, all things that the Ukraine side says that they're not willing to even consider. So right now you have no change of any of the partners. So I don't think that this call has literally changed a single person in this conversation so far.
Lieutenant Colonel, you mentioned it briefly. Let me just elaborate a little further into what Putin said. I'm just going by the statement that came out from Putin's side. Possible future peace treaty, the terms of a possible peace agreement, including a possible ceasefire for a certain period of time if the appropriate agreements are reached. There are way too many contingencies. There's nothing clear. And then you have Trump on the other side. Obviously, we heard that statement. Your take on that, on what Putin really is saying? And as you mentioned, nothing much has changed. But with so many ifs and buts, where do we stand as of now?
You had Dmitry Peskov, subsequent to that call, reiterate that the issue of the memorandum that Putin also said that the two sides would try to hammer out. Yes, the Russian side says if the details can be worked out, that if the Ukraine side will meet our demands, then yes, we'll have a negotiated settlement and we'll end the war right here. What was being reported at the Istanbul meetings was that the Russian delegation told the Ukrainian delegation, either you agree to these terms here and surrender the 4 Ukrainian territories, or we'll keep fighting and it will be 8. Not 4. And I think that is still the situation for the Russian side. I don't think they've changed any from that. And all the words that Putin spoke there really line up well with that view.
Now, Lieutenant Colonel, we of course hear you, and not to beat a dead horse here, but it's important to mention what Zelensky said as well. Ruled out troop withdrawal, rejecting Russian demands for ending its invasion, calling for tougher sanctions if there is no peace. Do you feel Zelensky is willing to compromise anywhere, and what sort of consequences will that have for him? Because we've seen that Zelensky has been equally adamant as well when it comes to negotiations.
And just to add to that, sir, does Zelensky have the option of being this adamant at this point?
No, he does not. Yes, he will. No, he doesn't have the leverage to do it. And he's in line with all the European leaders as well. All the way back to the meeting prior to the Istanbul meeting a week ago Sunday, all the time since there, they keep talking about these sanctions. We're going to force Russia into a peace. You're not going to force Russia into a peace. They talked about having sanctions on the Russian energy. They want to put more on the oil cap. They've already tried these things. None of them have worked, and Russia is even less susceptible to sanctions today than they were in February 2022 when President Biden put all these sanctions on them. So if it didn't work before, I don't have any idea why they're putting their credibility and their name on the line to think that that's going to change now. Zelensky does not have the leverage to say no to Putin. He either will agree on the negotiating table or Putin's forces will take it on the battlefield. There is virtually nothing now that can stop that. And if Zelensky keeps going on, you ask about the consequence, it'll be that they'll suffer a military defeat, not just an ugly deal that they could get right now. And I think that's what history is going to look back on this time.
Lieutenant Colonel, and just by what Trump had said in that Oval Office heated meeting, that you don't hold the cards, and I think that's just going to get proven time and again. And the fact that Russia launched its largest drone attack a day prior to those talks, and that is pretty much the writing on the wall on where things stand even now, months later. All right, thank you so much, sir. That was Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Always a pleasure having you on the show, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.